Welcome, Meteor fans, to the, what month is it? July Meteor Club Q&A. This month we have Eric Dobbertin with us. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you.
So there's a little disconnect here. So if people don't know, Eric is the guy that goes by Aldeed. Is that how you say that?
Sure.
Goes
by
Aldeed
or Aldeed.
Yeah, Aldeed on Atmosphere and GitHub and all those places. So you may know him by that name as well. And so he's definitely one of the more prolific package authors on Atmosphere. And he's also recently started working at dispatch.me. So welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm kind of curious, like what are you doing over there at dispatch.me? Can you talk about that at all?
It's really top secret. I can't say anything.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Actually, we're trying to be very, open source friendly with everything we're doing that we can be. And you can, expect more of that in the future under the dispatch username or organization. So there's already probably, if you look on GitHub, quite a few Meteor packages under dispatch that are written by Meteor or the other Meteor developers at dispatch. The kinds of things that we're looking at are possibly doing REST endpoints in Meteor. We've worked a little bit with Sashko on the simple REST package in that vein. Trying, a lot of things that other people are dealing with: scalability, Mongo versus Postgres, testing, microservices, and then looking into ECMAScript 6 or 2015 patterns going forward. So a lot of the same things that you hear from other companies and people using Meteor, but also trying to come up with patterns that we can kind of agree on in the community for things that people currently do in 5 different ways. And we're really hopeful. Right now we're just sort of like part of that noise, but we're really hopeful that we can work with some of the other companies that are using Meteor and solidify, and also working with MDG directly and solidify patterns around anything that's not defined by the core. How do you do this? How do you deal with security? How do you deal with what's the best way to deal with certain things that everybody has to deal with Meteor?
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting, and some other many of you probably heard of Raix, R-A-I-X. Morten Henriksen is also working at Dispatch and has been helping with these kinds of things. He's the kind of the brains behind the collection FS package and GroundDB and Famono, and I can't remember what else, but so he's pretty prolific package writer in Meteor, and us and a few other Meteor developers are basically doing, trying to do cool things at Dispatch and yet solve their problems that they've had with these existing apps as well.
Yeah, and so they were originally on Rails, right? And you've kind of been helping them port from Rails to Meteor.
Yes and no. Yes, they were originally on Rails. They're still on Rails for the V1 REST API and for the some of the apps, the desktop, one of the desktop apps. There's a Cordova mobile app that is on Meteor and a couple other apps that are on Meteor. And like I said, we're looking into a V2 REST API in Meteor, and also looking into a lot of micro services around Meteor, but not necessarily porting all of the Rails code. At this point, there's a lot of it and there's a lot of logic. And so what we're actually doing is continuing to use the Postgres backend that Rails talks to, and implementing some rather creative caching of that into Mongo. So basically real-time caching into Mongo so that Meteor can use Mongo directly. Our opinion of Meteor SQL at the moment is that it's not production ready.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not supported by core Meteor yet. So at the moment, we're going the route of having basically an entire cache of the database that we use for the Meteor apps, but works pretty well actually.
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing something similar with one of my clients. They're using Drupal actually to input data, and then it's getting synced over to Mongo, and then we have a Meteor app that's kind of bringing out the Mongo data. So makes sense to me. All right.
Yeah, and it's at the moment it's not a completely shareable thing, but it was our intention to try to come up with patterns and sharing around that kind of caching layer as well. So because it's kind of a common thing that people want to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely. All right, so let's take, looks like we got some questions in here now from some of the viewers. Actually, whoa, we just got a whole bunch. All right, so we'll just kind of, yeah, really. It's not though, that's the funny part. Well, maybe Tim Braden is the question bot. He's definitely got the most in here. So we'll just, if you're watching live, feel free to vote. You can go to the Crowdcast link. If you're watching on Google Plus, I put a link on the page there. Click on that, and you can watch on that page as well, and then also submit all the questions and stuff. And there's a chat. So we'll take the top voted ones here. The first one's from Lauren Sands Ramshaw. I know that he's hit some performance problems before. And so his question is, particularly around Blaze, have you hit Blaze rendering performance problems with your with something like your data tables package? And do you have any general advice in that area? I'm assuming he means to like track it down, that kind of thing.
Actually, I find I don't recall any Blaze rendering issues with Tabular. A while back there was some issues with template nesting that was causing some issues with Autoform due to the way that it kind of has a lot of nesting going on, which got fixed. So since then, I haven't really seen a lot of Blaze rendering issue. That said, I'm using several of my things are using a unreleased version of Tabular that probably has some performance fixes. So I'm actually hoping to get that released in the next week or so.
Nice.
So if you are having problems with Tabular, my advice is look for that next release. But generally speaking, I find Blaze to be pretty good performance-wise. I mean, if it's cheap enough mobile device, maybe not. But if you have enough power, I find it to be pretty good.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. So I'll have to find the link. Maybe if Lauren's watching, he can post it in the chat or something. But he actually had an issue where he was rendering some stuff. He opened a bug with Meteor, so I think that's maybe why he's asking. He's definitely hit some performance stuff before. All right. So Tim, Brandon. By the way, I said Braden. I don't know where that came from. Apparently, I missed an N. One of his questions is, what rendering framework do you prefer? React, Angular, or Blaze? I'm gonna guess Blaze.
I like Blaze. I like it a lot. Because I like it, and I've been doing a lot of projects that were already in it. I know the most about it. I like the idea of React, and I think for the same reasons a lot of people do, which is the backing behind it, and like the chances that it will actually turn out to be pretty good by the time it's fully implemented. And it already is pretty good. I don't know how much I'm on the bandwagon of port everything to React versus Blaze, because I feel like a lot of work went into Blaze and it does what it does pretty well. So, but I definitely do, and I saw there's another issue there about Autoform being agnostic, and I definitely do want to go in that direction, because you don't know what the future's going to hold with regard to components and the rendering capabilities of these engines. So I think, I'm not ready to abandon Blaze anytime soon for React, but we're definitely exploring React and React Native at Dispatch, and some of that exploration might impact my thinking as well. So I guess, as with most things, it kind of remains to be seen, but for now I'm pretty happy with the performance and the capabilities of Blaze.
Yeah, I guess I would echo those kind of sentiments. For me, like, I don't know. I think I've said it before. Like, I started doing web development when I was like 16 or 17. So this was like 96 or 97. And I remember putting like CSS and JavaScript directly in the HTML. And it felt like, when CSS came along and you were able to extract that out into a separate file, that made a lot of sense to me. And I'm kind of the same way. Like, I'd rather have my JavaScript and my CSS live in a different place than my HTML. And so React still feels a little weird to me. I think I should still dive in and probably at least build a project with it. And I do want to play with React Native. I think that could be interesting as well. So
yeah, I had some of the same. Last year, I had to do a project with Famous, and I had some of the same kind of misgivings about Famous, which I've got a lot of misgivings about Famous actually after trying that, but
I do too.
It's a little bit different situation, but it's the same idea. Yeah, it's like kind of just how do you like to think about things, and I definitely like a lot of separation and a lot of I don't know. I mean, there's not a lot of differences when you get down to it, but to me, it will probably be does it perform well, and what kind of tools are there, or packages are there around whichever one I'm going to use.
Yeah, I would think the React component system might get interesting, like being able to pull in some stuff. Yeah, everyone's noticing we're skipping over answering anything about Angular in the chat.
Yeah, it's not that I don't like Angular, but I really have not had a chance to build anything substantial with Angular, so I don't have a good frame of reference for it.
I'd be in the same boat. Like I built one little kind of interactive app on a page in a Rails app like 3 years ago, so that's probably not enough for me to really answer anything. All right, so we're done with that. So the one you mentioned before, Tim said again, I can't wait for an Autoform that is rendering platform agnostic, something that works with React, Blaze, and Angular. Would that be difficult to build? And I'll add on to that. Do you think? I mean, are you thinking about that? And if so, do you think it'll be something like user accounts, where we're going to have like kind of like a core package and then like a front end package that bundles on top of that?
Possibly. It's definitely something I've thought of, and going back to last fall or even earlier, I had done experiments with pure web components and Polymer and other types of things as potential ways of kind of plugging in a separate component architecture. It felt like it was not the right time to be going in that direction yet when I tried it. It just wasn't, like, there were too many other things that needed to be kind of cleaned up and stabilized about the package. And also just web components in general need to be kind of figured out, I feel. I don't So I think it would actually be somewhat hard to do that, just because of there's a lot of magic that happens in Autoform that is kind of dependent on the way Blaze works.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely, like, as I'm doing new things, it's going to be on my mind to architect it in that way. But I don't think it'll be, especially given the issue backlog on Autoform, it's probably a ways away. Unless somebody really wants to dig into it. And, you know, if it's not me, maybe it can happen sooner.
Yeah, you fully support someone investigating it.
Yes, yeah. Feel free to hack the package and let me know what you find out.
Yeah, well, it definitely. So Tim asked that question. I think he's been working a lot with React as well. So maybe he's a good candidate for that.
Yeah, and I know other people have mentioned it too. So it's certainly, we could probably pull together a group and start investigating if we want to.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So, I mean, do you have, like, is there already an issue open to discuss it, or should someone open an issue if they're curious and want to do something like that?
I don't remember if there's an issue at the moment. I know there was a discussion somewhere, but I don't remember if it was on GitHub or a forum.
Yeah, seems like it makes sense to talk about maybe in the Autoform GitHub issues or something.
Yeah, it should have an issue if it doesn't. There's quite a backlog on Autoform right now, and it's something I'm working through. But because of that, I don't even have the full issue list in my brain at the moment. But I do know there is an issue, I think, discussing something along those lines, but it might not be that exact thing.
Yeah. So I won't say, like, without looking at numbers, you know, I'd say you're definitely up there as far as most popular package with Autoform. Maybe not like Iron Router status, but I'm going to cherry pick my own question here. Do you have any advice for someone wanting to release an open source package? And how do you get people to use your package? And what's it look like when you become a really popular package author? Like, what does it suck up a lot of your time?
Good questions. Well, first of all, the most popular packages of mine, which probably led to people finding the other packages of mine, were written pretty early in the Meteor package days, before the Atmosphere site and everything. And I think part of it was just, I think there's two main things, which are probably not the things you would think. One is documenting them really well, because there was a lot of packages at the time that, like, seemed pretty cool if you kind of dug into the code, but they had virtually no documentation. And my packages definitely need help with better documentation sites, but at least the READMEs are pretty thorough. And the other thing was just the old package website bumped you to the top whenever you did a release. And for a while, I was doing releases daily, pretty much, trying to perfect them or pulling in other people's help. There was a lot of people who helped along the way.
Yeah.
So I think I got a lot of visibility just by being bumped to the top of the list every day, basically, for a few months. And also there was just not really much in the way of packages that did the things that mine did, which is the whole reason why I created them. I don't like creating packages if something good is already out there.
Yeah.
So I never really intended for them to be, popular or used by anyone else. My thinking was, and it was actually, like, for any of you who haven't published any packages or open source things, it can be a little scary to push enter on that publish command the first time or something, because, you know, you're kind of putting your work out there, or to, you know, make your repo public or something. But it's worth it, if only to get a lot of good feedback and help QAing your packages that you're using anyway in the things you're building. And then, you know, as a side benefit, I think it brought a lot of opportunities to me. I probably wouldn't have the job at Dispatch if it weren't for my packages. So I guess that's a plug for you there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
If anyone's thinking about releasing things, I would also say, even if it's like, you know, a competition with existing package, please release it. That's kind of how this all works, is you just, if there's something you don't like, you kind of either fork or do your own thing and release it. And then, you know, the kind of everything gets better as that happens more and more, kind of organically. So I think it's pretty cool. And I encourage people to, you know, make as many packages as you can, even if they're stupid. And if you later realize they're stupid, just, you know, put a note in the README so people stop using it. But don't be afraid to just...
They never stop using it. That's the interesting thing, right? Even if you put a note there, they still...
Well, that is true. So maybe, you know, take that with a grain of salt. But
yeah.
But I would definitely say, you know, there was a time where it's like, some of us probably feel, you know, that the Meteor package realm was a little more pristine than, say, Node or some of the other package repositories, just because of it being newer, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we sort of lament like all of the junk packages and things appearing there, but that's not really the issue. The issue is more about having good tools to organize and find the package you want. Mm-hmm. And so I would encourage people to, you know, just publish as many packages as you can. Just
yeah.
I would say junk is fine. We'll flag it if it's junk, but, you know, it's like, just do it, and then everybody can benefit from each other.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And I think, you know, Atmosphere kind of helps drive some of that, right? Like we still can't see the algorithm, even though Meteor owns it now. I still hope they open source it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would definitely say like Atmosphere does a slightly better job than some of the other package systems at helping expose the ones that you maybe actually mean to use. And, you know, I mean, I would agree, like early on, you know, putting out accounts entry, like just releasing it once a week was a great way to pick up new users, and documentation is super important. But I also feel like, you know, for me, like there's some packages I haven't updated in a while just because I feel like there's some amount of QA I have to do. So even though I get great pull requests, like I still need to test it out, and I don't have great tests in place on some of these packages. So, you know, you got to feel confident in accepting other people's code and owning it, because you're putting your name on it and putting it out there and potentially causing yourself some amount of deluge of issues coming in when something breaks.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I should have mentioned that. I mean, put as many packages out there as you want, but write tests for them.
Yes.
If you have tests for them, then you can very easily accept pull requests, and that's kind of the golden nugget there. So write your unit tests, and I would also suggest maybe doing it in Jasmine, as that seems to be the way things are going, instead of TinyTest. And we've recently converted a bunch of our TinyTests to Jasmine in Dispatch, and, you know, you get a lot of benefits out of that.
Yeah.
So,
would you say, I mean, is that primarily just because you feel the matchers are better and a little more readable, or is there some other reason you did that?
Well, there's, you know, more built-in stubs and mocks, and
yeah,
I'm actually
you got
not
the spies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, spies. I'm not a test writing expert, and a lot of my packages could use more tests. But it's something that I definitely, if I were doing it over, I would probably written more tests. You know, some of mine have a lot of tests. Simple Schema has a lot of tests, but I can certainly tell the difference with something like Autoform that doesn't have a lot of tests, partially because it's difficult stuff to test, but it's a lot harder for me to pull in people's code into Autoform, because I have to kind of go through a lot of manual testing of a lot of corner cases and things like that.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, you know, that's a very interesting point. I think for me, like I love MDG and I love what they put out, but TinyTest is definitely like the ghetto corner of Meteor itself, and I think it works just good enough for them to do what they need to do, and like they just left it at that. But like I remember the first time I used it, some of the matchers didn't even do what they said they did. And
I
so
think there's some that still don't.
Yeah.
Is true or something that.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So I'm gonna hit done on that one, and we'll come back to the top here. Ben Strahan, my Meteor Club podcast co-host, asked, "What are your thoughts on Meteor Astronomy? Have you taken a look at that at all?"
Yes, I have. I haven't actually tried to use it, but I have read over it. I think it's cool. I think it's something that I would probably have used, initially on several of my apps if it existed at the time. I think it goes along with what I said, that just even if it's competing with something else, go ahead and put it out there, and people can decide, what they like and what they don't like, and you can borrow from each other until everything is as good as it needs to be. So I think it's a little bit different way of thinking about things, and there's always sort of like the piecemeal approach to dealing with those kinds of issues as well, opposed by the more like top-down structured approach of how you're going to deal with an ORM or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
At different times in my life, I've preferred different approaches, and I think a lot of it just depends on what are the needs of the app and things like that. So I think and there's always going to be something coming along that seems really good too, and it's tempting to jump ship, and I do that sometimes, but sometimes you end up regretting it. So I don't know if that helps at all, but basically I would say that, like try different things that come out. I think Astronomy is a good package or a good suite. And, I hope it actually continues to get some good coding behind it and get up to where it needs to be.
Yeah. The docs are definitely pretty full there from what I've seen.
Right.
I definitely think it's one of those things, like for me, if I were going to start a new application, I would think about giving this a try. And the thing is, like, just spend a couple hours playing with it and see where you get, Like, I think even just a couple hours with a package is probably enough to evaluate it and decide if it's worth it for you or not. So give it a try. And, even if you end up throwing away a branch or throwing away even a whole repo and starting over because it didn't work, like, where are you at? You're down half a day? Like, that's worth it, I think, in the end. Even if it doesn't work out, you've learned something, and that can help.
I think as long as whatever you're using is extensible, that's kind of the key. If you don't get locked into their way of doing things necessarily, or you have some way of like writing an add-on package or that kind of thing, then it's okay. Anytime that it's a my way or the highway thing, then you get into a lot of, kind of pouring through code and trying to figure out how you can hack it to do what you want. So that would be my only consideration for any type of package like that. And, there's a number of other packages that have done, things similar to my packages that I think are good packages. They're just not, I don't use them necessarily because I have to use mine in order to maintain them. But I think, Mesosphere comes to mind, but I'm not sure if that's still maintained because, like I said, I don't use it. But that was another one that sort of came at the same time as some of my packages and took a different approach. And I think, that's cool too.
Yeah. All right. So this one just popped to the top. What's on the roadmap for Autoform? That's another question from Tim.
So the immediate roadmap is catching up with issue backlog well, actually before that even is just getting the develop branch working and release that. That is basically pulling in the things in Sasha's fork that Telescope relies on, so that Telescope can go back to using not using a fork of Autoform. But there's a couple of kind of sticky issues with it at the moment that I need a good chunk of time to debug. So hopefully we'll get that in the next couple of weeks released, and then getting through issue backlog, a lot of which I think are duplicates and questions, but there's still a lot there that need to get through. So then the feature roadmap is basically pulling out the Bootstrap theme as the default, pulling that into a separate package, and just having plain theme as the default. And then that's which is sort of a relatively small change, because they're already quite separate within there. It's just kind of moving files around and changing dependencies. And then I'd really like to improve the contributor documentation. So I think that it's the code is clean enough that if there's a little documentation around it, I could get help with it. Formerly it was quite a mess, and then Autoform 5 cleaned it up internally quite a bit, but there's still some lingering bugs from that I've been dealing with. And so now I feel like I'm, pretty happy with how it's internally architected, and it could be kind of described better in a contributor document, and hopefully can get maybe even some, if you're interested in push access or helping kind of transition it to a more community maintained package.
Yeah.
That's something that I've been thinking about doing. I want to be very careful about it because it's actually a fairly highly used package, and I want people to still depend on it, but kind of a slow transition to some kind of community ownership would be good. Managed community ownership. And then just, yeah, a lot of the UI component type stuff is probably next on the list, and just looking at how we can, it has the idea of input types already, which are sort of like UI components that are input specific. And so the idea is, can we kind of abstract that more and kind of help push along this debate about Blaze components, and make it so that any Blaze component, or any component ideally, whatever that is, could sort of define a few things about how you get values into it, values out of it, and such, and then essentially just work with Autoform within an Autoform. So
yeah, that makes sense to me. I think like the biggest issue for me is just when I got started with it, where do I look? You've got collection 2 and simple schema and Autoform, and it's like you're kind of digging through 3 docs and trying to figure out, like, where do I read about this particular thing that I'm trying to accomplish? And sometimes it turns out it's in simple schema, sometimes it's in Autoform, so kind of interesting.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, and it's one of those things that when you understand the distinctions between everything and how they relate, it makes a lot of sense. But until you understand it, it makes almost no sense.
Right.
And so I've definitely, I've already half written kind of a combined documentation website quite a while ago, and just never got it finished and put up. And so I'm still exploring how to hopefully have kind of a community maintained combined documentation site for those 3 packages that goes a little bit more in a combined way through how to use them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So how did you get hooked on Meteor?
Well, I guess it was a couple of years ago now, probably around, I don't know when it was, but it was whenever like maybe Meteor 0.5 or something was. And I really just liked the idea. I built a few somewhat complex apps in PHP and just using, like the old-fashioned Ajax type stuff. And I liked the idea of something with WebSockets for a project I was going to build, and kind of explored a number of different databases as well. And I'd kind of tried out a few different, like, sort of WebSocket streaming type libraries. And I think one of them was almost what I wanted. I don't remember the name anymore, but they, there was like a comment from somebody that was like, well, I think Meteor is better than this. And I was like, all right, I'll check out this Meteor thing. And I guess that, it was at the time what I was looking for. It was almost what I was looking for. I think this was maybe just before they added accounts. So that was kind of like, I was like, well, if only it had built-in accounts. And then I was like, oh, look, they're coming out with that next week. So, it was kind of nice, especially at that time to be able to prototype it. Now, also at that time, it was not working as well as advertised. It was still a very, rough product. So I think that's a lot of the reason why I ended up digging into the code and writing some packages related to the things I wrote, just because I had to fix things to get things working. So
yeah, that makes sense. For me, I came from a Rails background, and I had subscribed to Railscast Pro, and he did this series of screencasts in the Pro account where he was comparing like Angular and Ember and Backbone, and basically he was creating the same app over and over again. And those apps, it was basically just like almost like a to-do list type of thing. And it took him 2 episodes to explain each of those kind of frameworks. And then he did Meteor, and it took him, I think like 16 minutes. So it was like almost half the time to build the same app in Meteor. And I'm like, what the crap is this? Like that's quite interesting to me. And so that's when I perked up and started taking notice. And I think I got into it around 06, like somewhere like 064, 065, somewhere around there. So
yeah,
kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually kind of the rapid prototyping magic that brings people in.
Yeah, for sure. Like I had an app I had built in Rails, and it just wasn't working well. And so I wanted to use, I looked at Node and NPM because they had a package for doing AirPlay stuff, and it looked like it was better. So, that's kind of why I switched, and I was able to rebuild the entire app in a weekend, which was much faster than I'd done in Rails, even after like 9-10 years of Rails knowledge.
Right.
It was quite impressive to me. All right. So, do you think I should join Hair Club for Men? Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate that. What do you think? No? Yes?
No comment.
No comment. All right. Good enough for me. All right. So, you mean a lot. So this is from Tim Whistle. Hope I said that right. You mean a lot to the Meteor community. How does funding work for you? Do you have enough free time? I'm assuming he means to work on your open source stuff.
No, I don't have enough free time at the moment. That's why a lot of the packages have a backlog. I'm committed to not letting any of my packages die. And, that might, some of the packages are more important than others, and that might mean some of them don't see any love for many, many months. But like I said, one of my plans is to try to switch some of the more popular ones to a little bit more of a community managed system, but just being a little bit careful about doing that without losing too much control, at least until I'm, happy with a whatever kind of group or board might decide the direction of them. My time basically varies a lot. So I've been very busy lately, just with taking a new job at Dispatch and other things going on. So I am planning to have more free time for the packages in the later summer, early fall. So hoping I can get kind of caught up with everything by then, at least with actual issues. But I should say that there's a lot of quote unquote issues on GitHub, but I'm using a lot of them in production. There's not really showstopper issues on most of them.
Yeah, just a little corner case.
Right. If you happen to be in that corner case, it might stop your show. But
yeah.
but and if it really does, and you're just freaking out, feel free to bang on my door over email so that I can take a look at the issue more quickly. But yeah, I think I'm going to come up with some way to make sure that any packages that are used are maintained. And some of the companies that use the packages, companies as in companies that actually have funding or revenue, such as Dispatch, are interested in maybe sponsoring bug bounties for some of them that they use, including not just my packages, but some of the other packages. And so this has been kind of discussed from time to time, but never kind of solidified. But something like that could develop to kind of make sure that the packages continue to get the love they deserve. And also a few of them I'm hoping will get kind of absorbed into core at some point. Template extension being one example. And
yeah, well, apparently I've already started to absorb that, or try to absorb that into core. I put a pull request in, and I didn't realize that's part of what template extensions did. But
okay,
I added like
a
parent data, so you could, or parent template, so you could like get at the parent template
from
the current one.
And template extension is actually one that was a few different people's extensions that we decided to kind of combine. So I don't want to take full credit for everything in there, but it's basically a bunch of useful things. And I would argue that most of them are useful enough to throw into the Blaze package. So
yeah,
and there is actually an issue on the Meteor repo, sort of planning that out or anticipating doing that. So I'm hoping that and maybe a couple other small ones. I have like a reload extras package as well, and a couple others that are kind of just like extras. So hopefully those can be absorbed to core, and then I won't have to maintain those.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I would agree. I think that stuff needs to happen. I think looking at like just theming something like Telescope, or like I worked on letterpress with Sam as we're getting ready for our next testing class. I think that makes sense, because people want to be able to customize a template. They don't necessarily want to be relying on Sasha or Sam's markup, and they want to do something else. So it makes a lot of sense to me to have something like template extensions live in core.
Right.
For sure. And do you have, so I guess GitTip's been renamed. My question would be, do you have a GratiPay account if people want to like give you money for your open source work?
I do, yes.
I think
it's just under the Aldeed or something.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't think it buys me much more than a sandwich a week at this point, but you're welcome to contribute. It's not, I don't think money is necessarily going to make anything go faster, but
yeah.
If I can go out to dinner once a week, I guess I won't say no to that.
Nice. Totally agree. All right. More questions. So I think you started to dive into this one. Rob Fallows said, what I'd like to see is reduction in dependencies on CSS packages. Do you have any plans, for example, to remove the requirement for Bootstrap and Tabular? And so, I mean, you started to allude that that's the next step for Autoform, but have you thought about it in kind of other settings like Tabular?
Yeah, I do want to do that for Tabular as well. My thinking in both cases was kind of that, well, usually I try to make the package do what I need it to do for the project that I'm making it for. And so that was making Tabular initially for an admin project that was in Bootstrap. And it was easier to make it simplistic by pulling those files in, because it gets a little bit complex with kind of like load order and version dependencies and stuff. So I did it that way initially, but I did eventually want to pull out that dependency. Ideally it's just a lightweight wrapper around data tables, and then you can do what you want. Similarly, since you mentioned Tabular, that was also done with the explicit need of dealing with large collections on a server that I wanted the table package to manage the publications for, so that we could tap into the searching and filtering and all that.
Yeah.
And that kind of has some limitations if you're using that already, but then you want to use it for, say, a client collection or something that you do have all the data published to the client already. So that would be kind of on the Tabular roadmap as well as. So right now there are other packages that wrap data tables in a more simple way and would let you do those kinds of things. But if a lot of people don't want to use two packages, which I understand. So it would be nice to kind of support a simple mode, say, where the data is all on the client, and it doesn't have to do. It's probably one of the most complex packages I have. It does a lot of trickery to get all that to work. So it would be nice for a simple collection if we could avoid that trickery and just sort of do a clean implementation around data tables. So those are kind of the big those are the two big kind of Tabular changes I would want to make. That would be after this release that I need to release, which has a bunch of bug fixes in it.
Yeah. All right. We're getting close, but I think we'll be able to hit most of these. Ones that, no, maybe not. There's a lot left for it too. All right.
Could be one-word answers.
No. What's the benefit? This is from Almach? Corin? I don't know. I probably butchered that. Sorry, man. What's the benefit of using simple schema package? I thought the idea is to go schemaless, which is what Mongo is about, and what I understand more of the future.
If there were ever a question that's hard to answer shortly. Well, in some ways it's a matter of taste. You could be schemaless, but ultimately you want to know the schema for a number of reasons anyway. Autoform or collection 2, validating the input going in and out is one way, because even say you're schemaless, you might know that you don't want certain properties to be visible or editable by certain people, and you might want to manage that in the schema. And I think it's just really hard also from a development perspective, if you get multiple developers involved, to you end up having to write down some kind of schema, right?
Yeah.
You have to track it somehow. And then also just from a migration standpoint, things can get really ugly if you're too on the schemaless train. You can end up where you have like multiple different structures within your document, and it can really be helpful just from the get-go to have a schema. But there's certainly small collections where I don't bother attaching a schema, and I think it's nice to be able to do it either way. Well, of course, the obvious benefit if you use Autoform is that you can generate CRUD forms for it. So that's why a lot of people do it, I guess. But
yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of extra packages too, so you can implement things like SummerNote or Select2 based off that data too. So, but yeah, I would definitely echo that sentiment. I think schemas make a lot more sense once you scale past one developer, because you're kind of getting out of the range of like, oh, it's just all in my head and I can deal with that. And now, oh, hey, I got to make sure that this person also understands my intentions. And so I would say schema is definitely one form of that. Tests are probably another form of that, of kind of declaring your intentions with the code and that kind of thing. So makes sense
also,
to me.
yeah, I mean, it might be worth clarifying that it's still schemaless at the database level. So,
yeah.
I mean, you can get some benefit out of a business logic kind of schema, and then still have the benefits of not actually being forced into a schema. You don't have to like copy your database schema when you're copying your database or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's some of that benefits you still get, but while having a little bit of control over it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think short of like putting unique indexes or something in place, like that's really the only kind of schema you could actually enforce on Mongo itself.
Right.
So cool. All right. This is a good one. This is from Aaron Judd. So have you seen packages like Utilities Spin and Utilities Avatar move away from their original developer to a support organization? I think some of that's from Sasha. He's had this idea of like, getting an organization together in Atmosphere and maybe even in GitHub and trying to like have it more community supported, like you've mentioned. What do you think about this idea? Is it a good way to keep up support for things like ongo work security or template extensions? What do you think?
I think, yeah, it is the way I would like to see things go. I think we all, at a certain level, would like to see that, and we talk about it, and then kind of like it doesn't happen because it involves some work, and right now you can't change package names that easily and all this other stuff. But I think it has to happen for the anything that's not basically, I think when you had your Q&A with Matt Bergelis, he kind of was saying like there's some things that are kind of core enough that they would consider pulling, at least documenting them or pulling them in. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of other things that kind of like most people need, but and are very popular, but wouldn't necessarily they wouldn't want to be, weighed down by having to maintain those. So I think anything that kind of fits into that second category is really ideal for some kind of one or more community management groups to take hold of. Basically, an organization, a media organization in the package structure that would have some sort of defined organizational structure, charter, members, some way of getting involved, but only if you're worthy, and then some sort of open democratic way of voting up and fixing things would be great.
But yeah, that's kind of interesting actually, because we already have an example of that with Velocity itself. Yeah. It kind of came together, and there are a number of maintainers, and there's a central organization around it, both in Atmosphere and in GitHub. And I would say it's moved forward with relatively few bumps in the road. There were definitely a few disagreements over core structure, but and that did cause a little bit of fracture. But ultimately, I think velocity is getting to a place where it's much easier to integrate and use with your application. And I would tend to agree. I think I would love to see maybe more of a shift around that, and there's certainly precedence for it within the community. And I know like what you're talking about is around the collections packages itself. I know there's been a lot of conversation about having like a collections organization and moving things like helpers, collection helpers, and collection hooks and Autoform and a bunch of other things that kind of work with that stuff and kind of like move it all into that namespace. So
Yeah, and I don't know, if that in particular will be the way we go, but some kind of organization would be ideal.
yeah,
And I think you're right. The velocity is maybe a good experience to learn from toward going that. I think we just need to prioritize, us being like some of the package authors just need to prioritize getting that plan in place and just doing it, So it's another thing as I have a little bit more time, hopefully in the coming months, I'll try to think about, and hopefully other people who would be involved in that are also thinking about it.
nice, good answer. All right, let's see. Can we do one more? Maybe we got like 3 minutes or so. What Meteor projects do you work on when you're not being awesome creating community packages? So we've already talked about dispatch.me, but what else?
Unfortunately, not a lot of amazing projects that I can share at this moment, but I've had the opportunity to work on a number of a couple Meteor Cordova apps that were kind of like blazing the trail of all that functionality late last year. And that was taking up a lot of my time. Pieces of those were also worked on by Differential. I'm not sure, how much I'm able to say about all those. But they were certainly fun Meteor projects that eventually I believe will be, iPhone, Android apps, with quite a bit of scale to them. But I kind of passed those off when I took the job at Dispatch.
Yeah, and if anyone's interested, I do know the guy behind those, and he's looking to bring someone into the project. I know he's got some temporary help, but I don't think that help will last.
Yeah, so I mean, it's an interesting. Well, there's a couple of projects related to that, and they're very interesting.
Yeah, you did some work with Aaron and Reaction too, didn't you?
Yeah. So last year, I did a bunch of work for them, primarily looking into Dockerizing Meteor and just working on the Reaction Commerce project. That's where the OngoWorks security package came out of, which was primarily written by me, and a couple other ones under the OngoWorks. But basically, I helped. They're also, I think, maybe hiring. So if anyone's interested, but they're building a pretty advanced e-commerce platform in Meteor, which is really exciting stuff.
Definitely. And I've been doing a lot of work with them as well as of late. So they are fun to work with. I will say that.
They're fun guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
And girls.
Yeah, that's very true. All right. So I guess that's about it. It's 6 o'clock. So I want to say thank you to you, Eric, for coming on the show. It was awesome.
You're welcome.
And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Well, I haven't been doing the social networks thing, so I'm sure a lot of you probably are trying to follow me on Twitter and not getting any luck. But um, I at the moment probably is best to, well, if it's an issue, file it on the repo. I will be responding to those at some point when I catch up. And but otherwise, you can email me, the aldeed@gmail. And you know, you know, someone asked about the you know, what happens when you get to your packages get kind of popular. And one thing is you can't keep up with your email as well sometimes, especially when there are bugs that cause a bunch of people to email you and you can't keep up with them. So I would just say, you know, I might not respond right away, but I try to read emails eventually. Otherwise, I'm on some of the like community Slack things as well. So the Meteor Club, well, I'm not sure how you get on that, but
yeah. So I guess it's like a little softball love for me.
There you go. Yeah.
If you're interested, you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/Meteor Club, and Eric's in there, and a ton of other people. We're up to like 100 and something people in there. It's definitely like the most active Meteor Slack chat room that I've been a part of. Space Talk tried to give it a run for its money, but it's kind of died down over there too. So yeah, you can join there. It's like $10 a month, and that goes towards helping me pay my bills in regards to the podcasts, both of them that I do, and then this kind of stuff. And then just getting ready. Next month, we'll be starting like a private, for anyone that's paying $20 a month, we'll do a private Q&A as well. So, all right, man. Well, thanks. Really appreciate it. And thanks for watching, guys.
Yes, thank you for the questions.